you're able to get it, you can keep playing with it, but I think I'm going to get started. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think the people at home will have a little difficulty, but we'll get started nonetheless. So welcome everybody. My name is Jim Niedermeyer. I'm the superintendent of the school district. Thanks for coming out to our public hearing. So we're going to start the meeting off with this tonight, and then we'll go into our regular board session afterward. So it's my pleasure to talk about this project. It really has been my pleasure to learn more about the district through the making of this project. So a lot of the photos that you saw when you were on your way in are things that have been digitized from our archives over the summer and this fall. Because really I was searching for some older pictures of the buildings in preparation for the project, and then I sort of got sucked down a rabbit hole of learning all about the different people that have come and gone through our halls. And so it's been a pleasure for me to learn about that. So we are celebrating 100 years of Dwaynesburg Central School District. So depending on where you start. So the initial few schools consolidated about 100 years ago. The original high school, which still stands and we still use, that was built in about 1925. And so we're celebrating a lot of 100-year anniversaries, depending on where you start. But what we really have an opportunity to do now is re-envision the school district, not for the way the education worked 100 years ago, but for the way that we do education now. And so part of this project, one of the important things of this project is to really try to envision what our next 100 years is for that work. So we need to start really reimagining our facilities with modern usage in mind, because certainly some of the things that we require from our buildings weren't done 100 years ago. So I just want to welcome everybody again and sort of introduce all the people on our team, and they're all going to have a part of this presentation. So first, I'll introduce the folks from Ashley McGraw, which is the architectural firm that we're using. This is Nick and Catherine and Drew, and they're from our architectural firm. And then Jared is from Schoolhouse Construction, which is our construction managing firm. And Derek's also from Ashley McGraw too, sorry. And I think we also do have a person coming from our fiscal advisor as well to present that part of it. So we're going to take you through the project, both the construction part of it and then also some of the financial considerations that go into creating a project that's this large. And we'll also talk about the community input that we've already gotten and some of the community input that we're going to be looking for down the road as this project really gets going. Because right now we're really just talking about it in broad strokes. So I'd like to have Catherine come up and she can take over from here and start talking about the project. You're welcome.
So yeah, we had started this process. Too short to speak to this. We had started this process earlier this year, and we wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. So, like Dr. Niedermeyer had said, we included district leadership, architectural team, construction management, fiscal advisors to make sure that what it is that we're putting out is something that is feasible and makes sense for your district. And there are a series of things that we wanted to do to make sure that we had good understanding of those facility needs. So starting with the vision and aspiration, what is it that we see over these next 100 years, like Dr. Niedermeyer said, but also what is it that we need in the near term? What are the next 5, 10, 15 years looking like? Where do the facilities help support that, and where are there potential deficits in those facilities? And taking some of those thoughts and getting feedback from the community. So we had a couple of stakeholder engagement sessions where we really were able to ideate together. What is it that you guys are collectively seeing that you want that should be put together for a proposed capital project? And we did all of this so that we could really have a good, deep understanding on your district needs, both programmatic and from a facility standpoint. And we did this so that we could be very intentional with your resources available to you. We don't want to be proposing a project that is outside of your fiscal means. We don't want to be proposing renovation to your facilities that don't align with programs. So really wanting to be as intentional and purposeful as possible. From our couple of community workshops that we had, we were able to establish a shared vision. So what is it that the community members had collectively identified as what they want to see the outcomes are for their future improvements of the facilities? So how can they promote hands-on and personalized learning? How can they allow for multiple pathways? Create a balance between both high technology and low technology. Simple things like making sure whiteboards and access to resources are available, because that plays a huge role in the learning process. How the facilities and the campuses can be considered for the community, how we can best celebrate students where they are, and really encourage the multidisciplinary applications of learning. And so also out of that community workshop, thinking about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, the community members had begun to articulate, well, what are some potential projects that we could pull together to really have a big impact? So what does modernized public spaces like your cafeterias look like? How do we create spaces to socialize and gather? How do we ensure that any improvements that we do to our facilities are going to be adaptable and flexible for the changing and evolving learning needs? One conversation that was really interesting was, if we are talking about renovation to cafeteria space, what are some potential nutritional upgrades that we could be considering? So these conversations didn't just stop at the facility level, but really spanned, facilities, operations, different things that we could think about holistically when it comes to upcoming projects and initiatives. Creating autonomous environments for students, looking at furniture, how can we get the students and educators to really be prepared for what the next phase is, whether it's an elementary school student going on to middle school to high school to college or workforce. How can we really make sure that our facilities support that? And how do we optimize our outdoor spaces? So as an outcome of all of these collective community sessions and vision, aspiration, we had come up with a set of guiding principles that we will be carrying throughout design to ensure that we're hitting some of those high-level goals that we have identified together. So making sure that these improvements will reflect the needs of students and educators, instill a sense of community pride, prioritize relationship building and positive connections, and really ensuring that additional safety and security measures are integral to all of the work that we're doing. So with that, I'll pass it on to Drew, the project manager.
Thanks, everybody. Jeff, if you could talk a little bit about the project financials.
So the financials for the project, a majority of our payment will be made up of state building aid. Fortunately, our state building aid ratio is such a large number. So the reason why we're doing this project at the time that we're doing it is because at that same time, some other debt payments will be falling off, and so we're going to be able to move forward in this capital project without increasing taxes in order to pay for this project. So we're going to utilize also capital reserve funds and then borrow the additional money to fund the project, and then be reimbursed for state building aid for that borrowed funds. The state reimburses at our building rate at whatever rate they set. So based on current projections right now, that sets us at a no impact or no tax impact at this current time. So the building aid The building aid that we receive is actually just used to offset that debt service. So the first part of the project, being 6 million, would be from reserve, and then the 22 million would be borrowed, and then also funded back with state building aid. So we would be reimbursed with that over the years of the borrow.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so we're anticipating an overall project of $28 million broken into a couple phases. We're going to be looking at programmatic scope and building condition survey scope. So what is a building condition survey and what does that mean? Ourselves and our engineers walked around the facilities. We saw the things that needed to happen, and those got on the list, along with the programmatic things that we wanted to happen. So programmatically, we're talking about classroom renovations, kitchen and cafeteria renovations, playgrounds at the elementary school, and an office addition for the bus garage. Building condition survey items are more life safety upgrades, so interior doors, fire alarms, public address system upgrades, exit lighting and signage, roofing replacement, domestic water systems upgrades, mechanical and electrical upgrades, select exterior door and window replacement, and exterior renovations. So what are we actually talking about at each one of the schools? At the elementary school, we're talking about cafeteria and kitchen upgrades, classroom and corridor upgrades, life safety, and heating and ventilation upgrades. Not pictured, because we don't have elevations as well, are the playground that is going to be upgraded, the exterior restoration, and roofing and electrical upgrades. At the middle school, high school, we're going to be talking about cafeteria and kitchen upgrades, classroom and corridor upgrades again, life safety and ventilation upgrades, and exterior renovation, roofing, exterior windows and doors. And that's the project as it looks like right now. Again, this is going to be broken into two phases. The first phase is going to be largely roofing, and then the next phase will be the work inside of the buildings. So the bus garage scope is an office addition, metal roof replacement, metal skin replacement, and select mechanical upgrades. And I think Jared can come up and talk a little bit about how we're going to phase the project and what the schedule looks like.
Hello, everybody. So the fun part, estimating this in these crazy times that you are all aware of right now. So at the beginning of this process, we're looking at concept. We took the BCS that was done by the architects, and we determined with the district what are our high priority items. We narrowed down the list through dollars, and we got to these numbers, and the scope that Drew had just brought to you is what falls into these budgetary numbers. So this was in our pre-referendum estimate. This is pre-referendum, your vote is coming up. So those estimates were based off of these concepts, these areas, et cetera. Once we get through this, if the vote passes, we would then be doing estimates along the way. Typically, we'd see two more estimates, and that would be at a DD stage, which is design development. Approximately 60% of the design would be complete. We're going to make sure we're on track with budget at that point to continue going with design, make sure no modifications need to be made. And then we'll go into the CD estimate, which is the actual construction documents. This is the documents really close to being prepared to go to the state education department for submission. We're going to do one final check there and be prepared for, once SED approves those drawings, to go to bid day, that we make sure we've captured everything correctly on the estimate side. As I said earlier, you know, we've taken into serious account the current fluctuation in the market, what's going on with supplies, material costs, et cetera. So rest assured, we have followed a trend of escalation in these estimates. As we've stated before, we're not looking for the escalation to plateau or to go down. We are estimating in the sense of escalation continuing, because we cannot take the chance of saying it's going to plateau or come down. We have to prepare for that escalation to continue. I'll answer a question now. What happens if escalation drops? What happens if that percentage drops? If that is the case during our estimation process and we're seeing that that has come down, that will in fact allow us to build upon the scope that we already had planned on doing. There's potential to pull more things in if that escalation does come down. So fingers crossed for everybody that's for our own good, right, as well. So moving on to the next portion is our preliminary schedule and phasing. We'll hit some major milestones on the left here. This is today, 11:15, our public meeting. Referendum vote is 12:08. Once that passes, it goes into the phase 1 design. So this is where Ashley McGraw will take the bull by the horns and start designing for an SED submission for phase 1. That's that $6 million portion that Drew brought up earlier. Once that goes through SED, we would begin construction on that after bids, etc. And that construction would take place in the summer of 2024 is what we're projecting for phase 1. Also, while that's going on and phase 1 is getting wrapped up and ready to go into construction, phase 2 design has began with Ashley McGraw and us doing estimates again during that same process, that CD and DD estimate we were discussing earlier. And that process will move along, and for a phase 2 construction in spring of 25 through fall of 26. So phase 2 is the much larger scope of 22 million. On the right-hand side is just a brief schedule, just showing you a little bit more of a detailed breakdown of what's going to happen in those areas. The phase 2 construction is going to encompass much of the scope Drew spoke about inside the buildings, while phase 1 is mostly playgrounds and roofing systems throughout and some exterior renovations. The roofing work is extensive on these buildings. That is why you'll see that taking up most of the phase 1 budget. It is roofs throughout both the middle school, high school, and the elementary school. So I think the next slide is Q&A.
So the purpose of this hearing is to really give you a chance to ask any questions that you have about the project. So especially because we have our architects here and our financial folks here, please feel free to ask anything that you'd like. Or if you'd like me to kind of go back through the scope a little bit more, I'm happy to do that too. Just tell me what you'd like to talk about. The rest of the time is yours. It's because of our extraordinarily thorough job. If does anybody have any questions at all? Yes, sir. Yep. Well, the $22 million isn't a reserve. So $6 million is a reserve, and then $22 million is bonded, is borrowed. And then a lot of that is reimbursed through state aid that comes back to the school district.
You're saying that the school has on deposit somewhere $6 million in reserve.
So, yeah, the board has established a capital reserve fund that can go up to $6 million. And so by the time we're ready to do this project, that fund will be full. And the reason why the board established that is just for projects like this, so that it doesn't have to borrow whole amounts, that it can have some in savings.
That will be an extra tax, right? You're going to have to tax that to put it in.
So no, Jeff, do you want to explain?
Where will that money come from, I guess, is what I'm asking.
So the additional, or the $6 million would be a savings because there's no need to borrow for that. So that's because of savings. The $22 million is a borrow, and then we are reimbursed from the state. So at this current time, like we're paying for this capital project right here for this auditorium. So at the time when building projects, their debt starts to fall off, the other projects, prior projects, the debt falls off, that's when we're going to start to borrow for this project. So that's why we're waiting until 2025 to actually borrow money for this project.
Are you asking where does that $6 million, where does it come from?
Yes.
Okay, so the $6 million comes from, at the end of the year, if we have fund balance, we put a portion of that fund balance into that reserve account. And so over time, that builds up to the point that we're at right now. And so, no, we won't be asking for additional money to fill that out. We have
It's 18.6 million.
18.6 million.
0.6 million?
18.6.
18.6
Yeah.
million, okay. So in order to build up that 6 million, you've got to take some of that 18 million and that's got to come over somehow to build up that 6 million.
It doesn't come from 1 year. It doesn't come,
I understand.
it's from several years of,
Over the course of time, that money's got to be left over, or if we're talking about a fund balance, it's got to be left over to go into that capital fund or reserve fund, whatever you want to call
Yep,
it.
that's
Right.
right. And we do that so that we can do.
I understand, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Yes, Cliff. Strictly on brick and mortar stuff, strictly on infrastructure. Yep. But I'll say that, I mean, the physical structure does improve education in lots of ways. So if we have, for example, one of the things that we're looking to do is some of those rooms that are in the older part of the building are very small, and a lot of them house middle school classrooms. And so it's very difficult to run a middle school classroom that has collaborative learning where kids are up and moving around with the rooms that are the size that they are. So it will positively improve instruction, but none of the money goes toward educational books or anything like that, curriculum. So how much is currently in capital reserve? We did that report a couple of meetings ago. Do you remember? I can give it to you. I think it's like 4.8 million. The vote is going to be in the high school library on December 8th from 1 to 9. Any other questions? Okay. If you do think of anything, please feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to give you any of the information that you'd like. If this is also in board docs, it's on our website, so you can access this. And we also have a page started. If you go to the bottom of our front page, we have a little transparency center. There's a project section that you can actually subscribe to get updates about the projects that we do. So it's not just this project on there, but the last capital project. So yeah, I'd encourage you all to follow that and to ask anything that you'd like. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Or putting it- or she's in here.
Okay, we'll call the regular meeting to order at 6:29. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Any agenda changes? Yep, okay.
We had the one thing that Francis wanted to,
Yeah, the DEF donation. We're unclear at the DEF how all that should work, so we'd like to remove that.
the DEF donation, we're gonna take that off for the time being, because we're not sure, what they'd like us, how they'd like us to accept that.
Yeah.
Okay, next on the agenda is privilege of the floor. The board encourages public participation at board meetings during a specific portion of the agenda entitled Privilege of the Floor, public comment. The public comment section is not the time or place to register complaints about individuals or items that have not first been addressed through proper channels with those closest to the issue, such as a teacher, the building principal, the superintendent, or other appropriate party. Individuals making statements during privilege of the floor are expected to be courteous and respectful, modeling for our students how one can participate and have their voice heard in situations where there is agreement or disagreement with others' views. If members of the public have gone through the proper channels and still wish to discuss a matter with the board, they can submit their comments in writing to the board clerk. At its discretion, the board may invite visitors to its meetings to participate in the board's discussions of matters on the agenda. The public comment section is an opportunity for residents and residents only to address the Board of Education. Public comment should take place only in the portion of the agenda designated. This is usually at the beginning of each meeting. Persons wishing to address the board must indicate their desire to speak in advance on the sign-in sheet. Because the board typically has many business items on its agenda, speakers must confine their comments to 3 minutes. The board will not address specific questions, comments, but may ask for your name and contact information in the event follow-up is necessary. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving individual personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual personnel or students should present their comments and/or concerns to the superintendent, who will share them with the board at the next executive session. All right. So people wishing to speak, please come down to the microphone. And the first person I have or the only person I have who wishes to comment is Cliff Bradshaw.
No,
I'm not sure that it is.
hold on just a second.
She's working on it.
No, you can go to the other one if you'd like.
Test. All right. Good evening. When I first heard about the low national and state test scores recently released by the U.S. government at nationsreportcard.gov, I thought that it might be because of last year's forced masking and quarantining throughout our school district, state, and nation. But when I looked at Duanesburg's proficiency stats from the Transparency Center at the bottom of Duanesburg.org, I found some very troubling local statistics that go back for many years. Duanesburg's 2021 ELA proficiency scores for 4th and 8th graders are down 20 points and 8 points respectively, well below 2008 and 2009 highs. But Duanesburg 4th and 8th grade math proficiency scores plummeted over the past 12 years. 4th grade math peaked in 2009 at 96% proficiency. In 2021, they were down a whopping 73% to a 23% level, meaning only 10 out of the 43 total Duanesburg 4th graders understood math concepts proficiently last year. 33 students did not. 8th grade math also peaked in 2009 at 93% proficiency. In 2021, they were down 69 points to a 22% level, meaning only 10 out of 46 total Duanesburg 8th graders understood math concepts proficiently last year. 36 students did not. Seems to me there are two immediate DCS problems: aging infrastructure and low quality of education in math and ELA. Upgrades to the kitchens, cafeterias of both schools would be beneficial to students and staff for sure, and I agree, we should have them. But the reason I send my son to DCS has nothing to do with eating lunch. He seems to have learned this on his own. As a parent, I temporarily place my child in your care with an expectation that you will efficiently teach him how to read, write, and do arithmetic. According to these stats that I provided each of you, this is not being done sufficiently, and it needs to change. To address quality issues, I suggest switching from a social-emotional learning center education back to a teaching method that focuses more on developing the math, reading, and writing skills students need as they grow. Seek out school districts throughout the nation that have not seen a drop in proficiency levels to find out what they are doing right and duplicate it. Allowing some of the $6 million surplus allocating some of the $6 million surplus we talked about to solving this critical problem would be a great start. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, no one else has signed in to give public comment, but is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, if not, we will move on. And the next item is a report from Danielle Schneibel.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? My name is Danielle Schneibel. I'm the Committee on Preschool Special Education, Committee on Special Education, and 504 chairperson for the district. Maybe my teacher voice is too loud. So what I'm going to be doing this evening is sharing some district-wide data on students with disabilities. I'm going to review the continuum of services and discuss some of our goals moving forward. So as of last week, as you can see here, November 9th, 2022, we took a look at our student enrollment. Our enrollment numbers, K through 12, are around 650 students. Currently, right now, we have approximately 13% of our students identified as students with special needs. On the chart here, you can see that I have broken it out into our general education population, our students with disabilities, those that we program for currently in district, those that we currently program for out of district. And I'm going to discuss our continuum of services and some ways in which we offer those services. This is an additional chart that demonstrates over time students with disabilities who have been programmed both in building, in district at the elementary and junior, senior high level, as well as our out-of-district programs. I think what's important to note based on this trend is that we are programming for more students within our district and programming for fewer students out of district. Another important thing to note, as I'm sure many of you know, we've had a lot of influx of transfer students over the past few years. As of July 1st, 2022, we had a total of 8 students with disabilities move into the district, while we had 3 students exit the district and move on to another district. So our population continues to increase as our transient population continues to move in and out as well, giving us an additional 5 students there. So when we're looking at the percentages and numbers of students with disabilities, certainly those that are moving in and moving out are going to be reflected in that percentage that is classified. Additionally, at the preschool age, we're looking at students ages 3 through 5. We have currently 6 preschool age students identified as preschoolers with a disability. And at this time, when this data was taken, there were 6 pending. What pending means is that we are waiting to hold initial eligibility determination meetings, and we have students going through the evaluation process. So this is also important information as we're looking at our student population coming upwards from our preschool age population. We do have students both participating in integrated preschool programs, receiving only preschool itinerant services, as well as in the UPK. This is data from the New York State Report Card. This is accessible to anybody. Currently, the New York State Report Card only goes up to the 2021 school year. The 21-22 school year has not come out yet. But this has been our current trend over time in terms of our special education classification rate. So when we talk about the continuum of services are what we are required to offer to students with disabilities, providing them a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. So at the base here is what we call our least restrictive, which is our students with disabilities who are participating fully in regular classroom-based programs. The next step from there is students who are receiving related services, which could include speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Consultant teacher services, those can be provided either direct or indirect. We currently provide direct consultant teacher services at a number of core subject classes, depending on the grade level and the needs of the student drives where we are providing that service. Integrated co-teaching is an optional piece on the continuum of services, and I'm going to come back to that piece as we start to talk about how we are enhancing our continuum of services here within the district. Resource room is a pull-out services. There's a maximum of 5 students to 1 special education teacher, where students work explicitly on goals relating to their individualized education plans. Students in need of special classes or special programs to address academic, social, emotional, or behavioral needs may be programmed in what's called a special class, which is becoming more restrictive on our continuum. Some students require part-day special class, while others really need a fully inclusive program to support their needs. Then we look at our out-of-district programs, our day treatment programs, residential programs, and home instruction. So that's going from least restrictive to most restrictive. By law, we are required to provide students with disabilities education within the least restrictive environment as possible, but we also need to ensure that we are addressing and meeting the needs of the students. So in district, some of the things that we currently offer to our students with disabilities are our related services, our direct and indirect consultant teacher services. Direct consultant teacher services, for example, are a special education teacher who is pushing in to a core subject class to support special education students, and resource room. That is the continuum that we have available inside of our district. We always have to provide and offer availability to the full continuum based on the student's need. And so sometimes that's when we start to look at our out-of-district program placements to make sure that we're meeting the individual needs of the student. And again, under the IDEA, we are required to provide students with disabilities a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. So for students who do need special programming, day treatment, types of continuums of services that we do not have available in district, these are some of the other districts that we look to. We look to partner with and cross-contract with some of our neighboring districts that are a bit larger and offer those different types of programs. We also look to Capital Region BOCES, Wildwood, Crossroads, Mountain Lake Academy. These are all different types of schools and programs, state-approved programs that we contract with to help support our students who are in greater need than what we're able to provide within district here. So what we've been looking at as a district is enhancing our continuum of services. Like I mentioned before, the integrated co-taught is an optional part of a continuum of services. However, there's been a lot of research that's been done around the co-teaching model and how it really is about benefiting all students. With a direct consultant teacher model, you have a special education teacher that's pushing in and spending a great deal of time focused on the special education students. However, in an integrated co-taught model, it provides the opportunity for that special education teacher to go in and co-teach along with a general education classroom teacher to support all students. So some of the benefits include providing all students with access to the curriculum, helping to increase attention and interaction between students and teachers, increasing those positive social outcomes, helping to meet the needs of students that may be more at risk, who may be struggling academically, socially, emotionally, behaviorally, improving classroom communities and peer relationships, demonstrating how to interact, how to communicate, how to navigate, really honing in on inquiry and some of those other 21st century skills, increasing student engagement, setting high expectations for all of our students, and increasing on-task behavior. So we have been working with our staff around the integrated co-teaching model and talking about how we can enhance our continuum of services in district with the goal of continuing to provide our students with the least restrictive environment possible and some more options within our, the walls of our own district. Next, I wanted to talk about some areas of professional development that we have been doing. Myself and Laurel Holberg, who is our district school psychologist, we worked with teaching assistants and aides recently on how to proactively support students who demonstrate challenging behavior, as well as strategies for supporting and de-escalating students who demonstrate challenging behaviors. This was a very well-received professional development opportunity that we gave. We've gotten some requests as well from classroom-based teachers to kind of expand that out. And so Laurel and I began working at the elementary level with some staff during a faculty meeting and are looking to expand that support and that professional development outwards. We've also been kind of reinvigorating our functional behavioral assessment and behavioral intervention plans, processes, and procedures, and are going to be working with staff around how to conduct functional behavioral assessments, behavioral intervention plans, in a team-based model. So in terms of our goals moving forward, we're going to continue to review our students with disabilities data district-wide. We want to make sure that we're continuing to evaluate our continuum of services and evaluate programming that's going to be necessary to provide all of our students with a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. And also continue to assess the professional development needs and provide ongoing training to all of our staff so that we can make sure that we are fully supporting our students with disabilities. Thank you.
I have some questions.
So first of all, I have a comment, and that is that this is Daniel's first year in this role. We were extraordinarily lucky to have Danielle on our staff um, after Mary's retirement, because to have somebody this knowledgeable to kind of take over that position is something that I am thankful for every single day. So I thank Danielle for her hard work and being able to kind of rely on her knowledge. But just for people who aren't in the world of special education all the time, so you mentioned a couple things that I just want you to explain a little bit more. One is like you keep talking about free and appropriate education and least restrictive environment as being goals for the district to have. And so, can you explain a little bit about where that comes from and what that means?
Yeah, so under the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, we are required to make sure that we are providing all students, including our students with disabilities, access to a public education, that they're receiving educational benefit, that we are including them as much as possible in our setting. So least restrictive environment, what that means is providing students with disabilities access to the general education curriculum along with their general education peers in a setting that's both supportive for them, provides them that access, but is also meeting their individual needs. And so it's really important that when we think about least restrictive environment, we're thinking about, okay, how can we best support our students so that they can continue to work towards that local diploma, that Regents diploma, that advanced diploma. You know, we know that our gamut of students with disabilities, the spectrum is very, very wide. And we certainly have students that are taking accelerated classes and are doing phenomenal jobs, but they might have, you know, an area of deficit that is only in one area. Might be a reading, for example, and they may need some additional supports in that. While other students that we have do need a much more supportive environment. And so what we're trying to do is to enhance the supports that we're providing here, because our Duanesburg students are our students. You know, regardless of whether or not we may need to program for them out of district, they're still our kids and they're all of your kids. And so we want students to feel included. We want to make sure that families and the community and their children feel that we're doing as much as possible to keep them included in what we are doing as a district in our educational setting as best as possible. We know that given that we're such a small district, you know, we don't always have the same resources that some of the larger districts do, but we're working really hard to see how we can best expand that and enhance that so that we can make sure that we are providing all of our students with what they need.
Can you go back to the continuum of services slide?
Yep.
I think this is like the most important slide that I mean, if you had any resource to explain what special education is, this is a really good slide to show what it is, all the different pieces of it. So one thing that's important to me is that we're serving as many of our students in-house as possible. I notice on the continuum of services, there are some programs that are out-of-district programs. So why is it that we can't provide some programming in-house for kids? There's lots of different kinds of special ed classes.
Yeah.
Why can't we just have a 1211 here or an 811 here?
So when we're looking at the ratios, and I'll kind of briefly explain what the ratios mean. So special classes might be a 15-1, which is a maximum of 15 students with disabilities to one teacher. A 1211, which is 12 students, one teacher, one aide. You have an 811, and so the ratios continue, and the most restrictive really in a special class is like a 412. So you've got 4 students to one teacher and 2 aides. And so depending on the needs of the student, you know, that ratio is kind of determined. Being a small district, we are required to ensure that students are not programmed beyond 36 months in age difference of each other. So for example, I can't put a student who's in 2nd grade in a classroom with a 6th grader, even if their adaptive skills or executive functioning skills, their cognitive skills are at the same level. there are certain restrictions that go with that. And so when we look at our student numbers, our enrollment numbers, our students with disabilities, we have to be cognizant of the numbers of kids. And we have to make sure that when we group kids, that we're grouping kids based on similar needs, that we are not just taking any student with a disability from here and here and here and lumping them together, because that's not appropriate, right? Like, we want to make sure that we are meeting the individual IEP, right? Individualized education plan, that we're meeting the individual needs of our students. And so we look to some of these other schools and other programs who specialize or have special programs designed for a student with that particular profile, because we know that they're getting the services that they need to be successful and reach their full potential. And so what we're trying to do here within district is continue to enhance what we have available and what we can offer, knowing that we might not have at this point the resources or the number of kids to support a special class size. But it's important that we are always making sure that students have access to the continuum and are getting exactly what they need.
Can you go back again to the slide that shows all the different, the people that we serve in-house and the out-of-district place students? So,
This one or the next one?
the next one, next one. So this one's interesting too, because it shows that over time, more students are served by in-house special ed teachers. We also have more special ed students than we had before. A lot of those special ed students, that what Danielle and I are finding is that even though we're not classifying students at a higher rate, we are getting more CPSE students who are classified as special ed, as learning disabled, and we all are also getting folks moving into our district who come with IEPs. That impacts our numbers as well. The other thing that's important to realize is that even though the numbers of out-of-district place kids that is going down, which seems like it would be a fantastic thing, it's also really problematic too, because it also kind of means that there's fewer programs out there to choose from. So a lot of Danielle's time is spent kind of networking with these schools to find placements that are just right for students. And I know that that takes a tremendous amount of time and effort. Do you want to share some of the frustrations that you've had with that?
I can. So, more recently, as we know, we are kind of in a crisis when it comes to staffing. I mean, education in general right now, it's a tough time to find teachers. It's a tough time to provide related service providers. It's also a very tough time for our neighboring districts and our day programs and our state-approved programs to find teachers and aides and assistants and nursing staff as well. And so what we have found across the capital region is many programs are not running the same number of classes as they've been able to in the past because they can't staff it. And they need to be staffing appropriately, and they need to be staffing safely. And so some districts are finding, we don't have the staff to staff that program, and so we can't open that classroom. And I ran into a situation this summer where I had a program for a student, and 2 weeks before school started, I got a call, and they said, sorry, we can't staff that classroom, and so we can't open it. And so it's not something that we're only feeling here. It really is region-wide. I've even started looking beyond the capital region. I've been looking at HFM BOCES and ONC BOCES and WISHWE BOCES to find programs for some of our kids that need much more intensive supports. And a lot of what I'm getting is we're at capacity, or we weren't able to open that program this year. And so that's really creating some difficulty when we are looking at some of our most neediest kids right now, are kids that need some of the highest levels of interventions, and those programs are not available. So that's definitely been a barrier, and something that as a region, as chairpersons, we're trying to come together and kind of brainstorm how can we kind of address this crisis in the moment. But we're certainly not the only district in that situation.
I'll cede my time. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Danielle. This is such important work, and I really appreciate you going through it so thoroughly for us. But so for those students that do have that high level intensity need, and we don't have programs to send them to, what are we able to do for them in the interim while we're, hoping that a program will open?
So fortunately, we are currently only in a position where one student we've been unable to program for. I call districts, I call programs, I email, I follow up, I do it every week. Same thing with service providers for our preschool students. I'm bombarding our Schenectady County approved providing lists over and over and over again. So far it's been, I've been able to be proactive to kind of see things coming. Where it becomes tricky is for our transfer students that are moving in. We are required to provide the services as closely as possible that are indicated on the IEP. In some cases, our direct consultant teacher services are able to do that, or we're able to, make sure that we have supports available for that student, additional adult support, for example, to be able to bring that student into our classrooms. In other cases, for students that have more significant needs, we do get put in a tight spot because it's not safe for them and it's not appropriate to be bringing them into a building when they need a special class and that they need very specific supports in place. So at this time, we do have one student who's currently on home instruction who's receiving direct tutoring from a teacher in the district, as we are continuing to do our due diligence to find an appropriate placement for them.
The 13.5% of the overall population, is that just students?
13.2.
13.2,
Yep.
excuse me. Is that just students receiving like resources, or is that everyone with an IEP?
So
or
this is
504?
every student with an individualized education plan.
Okay. So it's
K
even
through
those
12.
that are just receiving counseling or anything? along
Correct,
those
it
lines?
doesn't count. So for example, a student with a 504 plan that might receive counseling is not
Okay.
included in
Okay.
the Students with Disabilities chart. We currently have, I believe it's 13 students with 504 plans district-wide. And many of those are medically related 504 plans. You're welcome.
Thanks, Danielle.
Click out of this. I'll bring it back to that.
Okay, next on the agenda is to approve minutes of the October 11th, 2022 Board of Education meeting. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Melissa. Second? Thank you, Teresa. Questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Moving on to new business. Board of Education Standing Committees. Audit Committee, is there anything to report?
Yes, we met on October 26th to review the year ending in June 2022. The district is a good standing and our staff was complimented for continuing to do good work. The district utilized 93% of our budget and maintains a 4% level for our general unassigned funds, which are indicators that good decisions were made and continue to be made. We are thankful to Jeff Reidenberg and the staff for working with him in these efforts, and also to the community support for district financial decisions.
Great. And I think we have an item on that coming up later too, in the agenda. Next up is Building and Grounds Committee. Did you guys meet?
We have not met, but the capital vote's coming up.
Yep. All right, and last but not least, Policy.
Yeah, Policy Committee met on October 18th. No, I'm sorry, yes, October 18th. We reviewed the updates to the policies that are on the agenda for this evening that we are going to vote on. And then just in general, rather than have a meeting every time there's a small policy update, we're going to sort of gather them together and bring them to the larger board. As long as they're not time sensitive, we're going to gather them so that it's not quite so piecemeal and a more cohesive and efficient way to review policies.
All right, thank you. Moving on to financial items. Accept financial reports. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, revenue status, and treasurer reports ending September 30, 2022. Claims auditors reports, general warrant 813 in the amount of $406,853.71, and capital warrant HB 6 in the amount $7,332.87, dated October 19th, 2022, and general warrant A16, general warrant A16 in the amount of $217,417.27, dated October 25, 2022. ECA report ending October 31st, 2022. General warrant A15 in the amount of $355,884.58. Capital warrant HP 7, the amount $47,265.81. And capital warrant HB 2, $114,191.11, dated November 10, 2022, as provided and recommended by the Treasurer and Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Francis, thank you. Second? Tony, thank you. Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Mhm.
So I forgot actually which document it was, but it was on page 5, and it's the library services BOCES budget.
Which warrant?
I think it was the first document, financial approval, treasury reports, on page 5.
There's the magic button. There, nominate.
Okay.
I believe it's that page. So there was, nope, it wasn't that one. Wait a minute. Yes, it was. Okay. So it's the 8.2610.490-00-00. It's library services BOCES budget for $30,978. What is that for the digital library that we pay for, or?
We have a lot of library services that are including, yes, the digital library book service, but also databases that students use, the system that we use to check out books. There's a software program that we use that has films on it that we're allowed to show in classes. There's just a whole host of things that come from library services. So not just that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to the next financial item. Approve K through 12 comprehensive school counseling plan. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the K through 12 comprehensive school counseling plan as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second? Okay, thank you, Melissa. Questions or comments?
I do. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
So this is something that's been updated every year, correct?
It is something that is updated every year. I'm not sure if it's been updated every year, but it was originally introduced in 2019, I think.
Okay.
and has been
yeah.
updated periodically.
Okay, and I just was wondering, has this been an effective process for, for students and teachers and counselors so far?
So the things that we do within it, yes. The plan itself is a required document, so
Okay.
I'm not sure that having the plan has been a great way to do much, but yeah, the things within it are.
Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve memorandum of agreement between the district and the Duanesburg Teachers Association. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the memorandum of agreement between the district and the Duanesburg Teachers Association dated November 15th, 2022, with respect to wages for the title of teaching assistants, and authorizes the superintendent to execute the agreement. This agreement shall take effect on November 27, 2022, and will be reflected in the subsequent pay periods. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Avis. Second?
It's like, good, Tony.
Tony?
Tony.
Giving it to Tony. Okay.
Matters. It matters.
Questions or comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve disposal of obsolete equipment. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve surplus of the following obsolete equipment and authorizes the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services to determine best interest of the district either to trade in or auction as per list attached. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second, Melissa? Thanks. Questions or comments?
I just want to make a comment. I appreciated the pictures and the description.
Yeah.
Me
That is
too.
some broken looking stuff.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Please don't show my child or my husband that this stuff is
Yeah.
available.
Well, it'll be online. It'll be able to.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next item, accept audit management response letter. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the audit management response letter as recommended by the superintendent and assistant superintendent of management services. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Francis, thank you. Second? Thank you, Melissa. Questions or comments?
I'd just like to say, I'd like to, Jeff, you and your staff, I mean, audits are not exciting things, but the glowing response from this group of how professional you guys were is really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, it's not the first time either. We've had
No.
a very good history of doing well on these, so it's much appreciated.
Thank you.
I do have a question. So there were mention of 2 clubs that weren't active, probably is that because of COVID, right?
Yes.
So how are those clubs doing right now?
I'm unsure of their status right now, but
What are the 2 clubs?
I think they do plan on starting back up, or I forget what the clubs were. There was a. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on that. Sorry.
It's okay.
You can just let me know
Yeah.
later, I know. I was just wondering what the clubs were because they didn't mention the clubs.
I think there
Yeah.
was like 7 of them last year though, so we're
7?
getting better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there were more.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Last financial item. Approve healthcare stipend. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves payment of the healthcare-related services stipend of $1,300 to Melissa Misek as per the Duanesburg Educational Support Association contract, Article 25, Item G, effective with the start of the 2022-2023 school year. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second?
I'll second. Oh,
Avis, we'll give that one to you. Thanks. Questions or comments?
Would anyone like to know what this is for?
Yes, please.
So Melissa is our UPK aide, and it is a stipend that goes toward assistance with toileting. And so it is very well earned and probably not enough money, but Melissa does a great job in UPK.
All right. Any questions? Other questions, comments? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to other. Approved Committee on Special Education and Committee on Preschool Special Education minutes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the CSE and CPSE meetings and their minutes from the October 13, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 25, 31, and November 1, 3, 4, 10, and 14, 2022 meetings. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Francis. Second? Tony, thank you. Questions or comments?
Yeah,
That is a
do
lot
you
of
see
meetings.
why?
Yeah.
It's also important. So that continuum of services, you can see in those meeting minutes, those services that those students receive. And so I think that is also helpful in understanding these reports.
Next item. Oh, excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Now, next item. Approve revised policies 3820 and 5720. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve amended policies 3820, community use of school facilities, and 5720, transportation of students, with the first read, waiving a second read as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a motion? Melissa, thank you. Second? Teresa, thanks. Okay, questions and comments?
Just want to point out a couple things about these two policies, which we talked about in policy committee. So the first one, the policy 3820, there's a minor change that we're making to make it clear that all outside groups are required to have insurance provided. And so there was something that made it read as if certain preferred clubs, organizations, didn't have to have that, and that's never been true. So we wanted to make sure that that was clear to people. And then the other one is policy 5720, and the thing that was included in there is a short paragraph that is about occasional transportation of staff members. So not something that we ever, sought to do, but it is in the law that staff members can occasionally drive under certain parameters, and we wanted to include it in the policy just to make it clear to everyone what those parameters would be. Not that anybody has to provide these transportation, but especially because we've been so short-handed in transportation, it's helpful if you have a small trip to be able to run 5 kids in a Suburban to an event. So that's the purpose of those two policies. And so I was asking, because there's such small amendments, waiving of the second read, but if anybody wants both reads, that's fine too.
Okay. Well, let's start with community use of school facilities. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that one?
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
agreed. Okay, moving on to transportation of students. How about that? Anyone questions or comments on that? Okay, I have some comments. Hopefully I can understand my notes. So in the instance where staff would drive students,
Yep.
do we foresee what vehicles they would be allowed to use?
Yes, sir. There are two kinds. One is a Suburban, and the other kind is it's like a van, and we have both of those vehicles in house already.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
They both hold. They're both hold fewer than 15 passengers. I think the Suburban holds like 9. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Next comment.
Shane, I have one if you're
Pardon?
looking. I have one. I have a question actually, if you're digging.
Yep.
It actually says certified teachers and coaches.
Yep.
What's a coach?
So
Could a coach be, let's say, a volunteer for the district that's been
I
approved
know
by the
where
board?
you're going with this, Francis. And
I mean, he hasn't been approved yet.
yeah, so the coaching is also a certification.
Okay.
So I think the adjective certified applies to both of those two nouns.
No, I'd like it to be that I could borrow the Suburban and drive my kids to my elementary school and high school.
I thought so. We'll get them there for you.
Okay. So going toward the end of the policy where there's the numbered list there, 1 through 6. Items 3 and 4 allow from but not to. So a parent or legal guardian may choose to transport his or her child home from an event, but it doesn't say they can transport them to an event. And I know sometimes, parents have to do both.
Mm-hmm.
So it just
Yep.
it seems like maybe it should be both.
It is both. We do have because most of the time it assumes that transportation is provided by the school district too. In occasions when it can't be provided to by the school district, there's another form that we have that people can sign off on to be able to transport kids other than their own kids, stuff like that. There's like, I think I shared it with the policy committee. There's like a bunch of forms. So that is the case, but it just sort of assumes that most of the driving is going to happen because the school district does transport to the event.
Okay, but should we say both, just to cover the case where parents have to do both?
Well, this one is only, I think 1 through 6 are only about from stuff, from the event home. Yeah.
Yep.
Returning
Okay.
from a school-sponsored event. Yeah. So,
There's nothing really about to the event.
I mean, part of it's about the liability of handing off the child, right? Is that, to get to the event, the parents have the or whoever has the liability to get them there.
Right.
And then the school needs to make sure they're safe
Mm-hmm.
to return them on.
Yeah.
So I assume that 2 is a slightly different conversation.
Yeah, and that's why all the administrative stuff, all the forms are really clear in what kind of liability they're taking on when they do that.
Yeah.
However, still, if a bus is in an accident, they're probably going to be looking for your insurance information too.
So is it fair to say that the 2 issues are addressed by the forms?
By the administrative kind of things of the forms and not, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then I think I have potentially one more add, although maybe this is also on the forms. And that would be to suggest a new number 7 along the lines of the district is not responsible for students or vehicles driven to events by non-district employees. Something like that.
Yep, that's also on the forms for those emergency driving forms.
Okay, okay. Well, then that takes care of my concerns.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I just had a question. So does the school keep a copy of the driver's license of the adult drivers and the insurance card?
If they're occasional drivers,
Okay.
yeah, we would probably get a copy of their license before they're allowed to take a district vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah, and we know where they live too, so.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about
Yeah, and-
me giving permission for another parent to take my child home, we don't, that's me signing that off. Right? That's
So
my personal
actually,
choice, right?
actually, no, it does say on the forms too that if you're allowing somebody to, if we have a form for people who want to volunteer to take other students, and even those parents would have to provide insurance information and driver's license information,
Okay.
and we'll keep those things on file too.
Okay.
What about shared transportation with other school districts? Like say if BKW drives our students to an event and not a Dwaynesburg bus?
Right. Vice versa. Or sometimes transporting another school's kids to and from events because we have shared transportation agreements.
It's a good question. It's a good question. I don't think we have anything that specifically says that addresses the kind of shared teams that we have in the transportation sharing agreements.
Right, because it just says our districts.
Mhm. So I think that what this conversation is indicating to me is that maybe this policy needs a couple of additions, and then we'll bring it back next time.
Okay.
Sound okay?
Cool.
So can we table this?
Can we
I'm
vote
sorry.
on one and table the other?
You can make a motion to do that.
I will motion to vote on policy 3820 and to table 5720 till next time.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Teresa? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good. Trying to remember exactly. So
Now we need to vote.
we need another vote to approve.
Yeah, because we voted to table the.
Yep. Okay, so now I need a motion. No, we had the motion.
Mhm.
So now the vote. So vote to approve the
Amendment to 3820.
Yep, amendment to 3820. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Does that wrap that up? Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks for your comments.
Next item, accept.
We're just
Oh,
getting
that's
that.
right. So we're tabling, taking this item off the agenda. Personnel. Accept resignations. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Brittany Lawrence, elementary school nurse, retroactive to October 25, 2022. Tom Newport, bus driver trainee monitor, retroactive to October 3rd, 2022. And James Kelly, cleaner, retroactive to November 2, 2022. Do I have a motion?
Did just before we vote, the Brittany Lawrence title, was that elementary school LPN? Is that how we approved her?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know how we approved her originally. Celeste could probably find that out. But it's not an emergency thing. I just want to make sure it's.
Okay. Do we need to hold up for that or?
Nah,
ahead?
go ahead.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
A motion. Oh.
Avis, thank you.
I'll
And
second.
second, Francis, thank you. Questions or comments?
With Mr. Newport, he never became a driver ultimately, right? So it's not changed our workforce numbers, right? Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve appointment R. Canavo. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Rosa Canavo to a 4-year probationary appointment as a special education teacher in the special education tenure area, Master's Step 13, commencing retroactive to October 17, 2022, and ending October 16, 2026, contingent upon compliance with the requirements of the education law. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Teresa. Second? Melissa, thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on. Approve appointments. Recommendation of the Board of Education approve the following appointments as recommended by the superintendent and assistant superintendent of management services. All appointments are employees at will, and appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school year or term. And there are 17 names listed and their titles. I'm not going to go through all of them. So as listed, do I have a motion? Thank you, Tony. Teresa, thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay, Francis. Last personnel item. Approve election inspectors. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following election inspectors for the December 8, 2022 capital project vote at a rate of $15 per hour. Forrest Holroyd, Rosemary Schiffner, and Lori Cool. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Francis, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Avis. Questions or comments?
But it would be nice to see Mrs. Cool.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to information items. Information about a dental clinic.
Yeah, so this is something that we've been looking for a long time, and our nurse, Stephanie Yockler, found it, and it's a free of cost dental clinic that travels around to schools to provide students with dental cleanings, dental visits. I think it's a really great service. It doesn't cost the district a thing, but they set up shop in our schools and come every once in a while, and I think it's a great new thing to offer. So thanks to Stephanie for finding that, and then also, because I haven't said it all year yet, thanks again to our nurses. So Janelle is our new nurse in the elementary school, and Stephanie, they're continuing to do a great job. It's nice that they are able to focus on regular nursing things instead of all the craziness that we've had over the last couple of years. So, and we're looking forward to having our new LPN join them as well pretty soon.
Great. Any other questions, comments?
Does the principal have to sign this, or, because there's a signature space for the principal?
She probably did.
Okay.
All right. Next item. Another information item, the 2022 tax collector report. Anything you want to mention on that?
So the taxes collected this year were pretty similar in percentage-wise to what was actually collected and what was turned over. This is a summary of what was collected, and then what would have been turned over to the county to collect. So anything that was not turned in either on time or even in the late period turns over to the county, and the county goes after those properties to tax them. And then the county then makes us whole.
Okay. All right. And with that, motion to move to executive session to discuss labor relations. Do I have a motion? Francis and Melissa?
Yep.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. We will be going to executive session, and after that, we will just come back to regular session to close the meeting. So there's really nothing more to hang around for. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. She's fine. Not injured at all. Thank you very much. Are we staying? Yeah. Okay.